How's it going, my fellow parents? You know what? We love our families. We love our kids. And so many people say, family is the most important thing. But that's easy to say and much harder to actually commit to living an intentional life where you are really living out and prioritizing your family, being the best parent you can be, the best leader, the best teacher you can be, loving on our kids and leading healthy families in a pretty chaotic, hard time of 2024 when there's so much temptation and so many issues in our culture and our homes and so much emotions. It can be really hard leading a healthy family and being a healthy parent. But today, that's what we're here for, Jordan, to give some support, encouragement, and love to our fellow parents.
Amen, man. I mean, it can be hard, especially if you are sitting there and you're struggling and you're looking at the bills and there's so much stress and you're wondering if you could pay rent, and then of course you got these kids screaming in the background and you got to figure out what to do with them, and the summer's been hard maybe on you because they haven't been in school. Well, again, we talk about different seasons we're in, right? And then this season's about to change. We're about to go back into school, get back into the groove, and maybe that dream job is just around the corner. But the reality is we're always chasing something, right? And while we're chasing something, we want to be mindful about what's right in front of us and be good stewards to our family, even though everything around us can be stressful. It's hard to do, but if we're intentional, I think it can be done.
Well said, man. Well said. And as you're listening to this is coming out right at the time when school is starting up. And so this is why an episode on boundaries is so appropriate, because the childhood experience outside of our homes is filled with boundaries, highly structured. And so we want to create a home culture of healthy boundaries in our house. But this is not easy to do. It's hard for us because many of us didn't have parents who modeled good boundaries, good order, good structure. They were overly strict or overly structured, or they were just so loosey-goosey. And what I have found working with parents for almost over 2 decades now, if you ask 10 parents, Jordan, when you think of boundaries in the home, what do you think of? You're going to get 10 different answers, not 9, 10.
Really?
So it's very unique. Let me just do it for you. When you think of boundaries in the home or creating a home of healthy boundaries, what's something that you think of?
I mean, my thought is kind of like you blend it with it's almost like a rule book, right? So it's like, hey, we eat dinner at this time, we go to bed at this time, we don't act a fool in public, right? In this family we act this way. It's kind of like the rules. It's like if I'm at work. I'm not going straight to the CEO with the problem because it's not necessarily a rule, but it's like that's kind of a boundary you don't cross. You go up the chain of command to get up there. And it's not like I can't do it, but it's like, no, the general rule here is you go to your boss, which then goes to their boss, or then goes to the CEO. So I think of it as kind of like a set of soft rules around the house.
Well said. Gosh, I really like that, because let's just imagine a childhood classroom, whether elementary or high school. I mean, these kids, their whole day is structured by a bell. A bell doesn't have feelings. A bell just rings, and it tells them, this is the rule. You're supposed to go here. You're supposed to go there. And when our kids are in elementary school, they make kids go up in lines quite a bit. You make a line to go here. You have a line for the drinking fountain. So there's all these. I think it's really fair and appropriate to associate rules with boundaries and boundaries with rules. Yeah, well said. It's like, this is the way we do things. This is the boundary. You can't cross it. And if you do, then someone's going to correct you. What else do you think that a parent might think when you think about boundaries? What else comes to mind?
Maybe personal space, right? Like, hey, I have a boundary that, don't jump on mommy's tummy because she's pregnant. That's a boundary. We need a rule.
That's good. That's good.
Give her space, right?
Personal space. Yeah.
Personal space. Something like that could be a boundary. Talking back. Going back to rules again. Just respect. So I guess you could put maybe the word respect in boundaries.
Yeah.
You have boundaries shows that you have good respect for each other.
Well said. This is what You're helping me right now, because this is one of the impacts that this episode's going to have on you if you're listening. You're going to raise your emotional intelligence on boundaries quite a bit in the next 50 minutes. You're going to be thinking about how big boundaries are, how much we need them, and you'll be hopefully have these aha moments like, oh yeah, that is a boundary. I haven't thought about that, because we're not going to put them into like little bullet points. Like you have verbal boundaries, you have emotional boundaries, you have physical boundaries, you have orderly boundaries, you have sibling boundaries, you have moral boundaries, you have hygienic boundaries, but there's just so many boundaries we can think of. So here's why I wanted to do this episode, because I've got some parents inside of my membership right now, and their homes are very boundaryless.
Well, I was going to say that's the biggest problem. We have these ideas of what a boundary or a rule is, but we don't enforce. There's no enforcer.
Right. So like if you have a home of love, but you don't have boundaries, you're going to have a hard home. If you have a home of kindness, but there's still no boundaries, that is not gonna go well. If you have a home of hot-tempered Italian people who are yelling and raising their voice, but you have no boundaries, it's like your home is really, really gonna struggle. So, like, here's some real-life examples of why we're doing this episode. So, all right, there's some things, and these all have to do with boundaries. Have you ever had that experience when you have a little kid, or even like an elementary age kid, and they're just following you around the house? Have you ever had that experience?
I have it right now.
And it's annoying. And they're breaking your boundaries. It's like, leave me alone.
But
Get
I
out
have
of
to
my
remember
space.
it's cute. Like they're trying to learn, right? It's like the little ducks following their mom across the road. Like they're
That's a nice way of looking at it. It's
cute. They're following.
That's not what I was thinking, man. That's not what I was thinking. I was thinking it was uncute. It's like, come on, give me some space.
I know. It can be obnoxious, especially when you have like work to do. Like you got to get in the garage. I got to go change the oil. And they're like, well, I want to help too. And you're like, no.
Partly why I'm doing this episode is because of this lovely mom, and she's got 4 kids, single mom. And on our first membership call with me, because she gets invited to come to 3 a week, she says, yeah, I really need some help, putting boundaries in my house. And while I'm on a Zoom call with her, you see the kids come in to her office and are bothering her. And I'm like, oh, this is what you're talking about. Would you like help with this? She's like, yes, please. I don't know how to get them away from me. All right.
Put a lock on your door, duct tape them to their bedroom. I don't know what you told her, but that's good.
You know what's a common struggle is because like co-sleeping is kind of like accepted now. It's kind of like, it's like we know it's really good for kids. There's a lot of people out there who are really disenchanted because they have no boundaries in their bedroom, because their kids are constantly sleeping in their bed or coming in at nighttime, or they don't have any privacy in their own bedroom. So these lovers are having a hard time.
So it's starting to impact the relationship, what you're saying, for the parents.
So wouldn't it make sense we need boundaries to have alone time with our lovers and our spaces?
You got to have that.
Yeah.
Or else you're finding really quick sessions.
How about this one? Another reason why I'm doing this is because there's a single mom in my membership who's got a very hot-tempered, strong-feeling 6-year-old. And the 6-year-old starts off by saying things like, I hate you. You're the worst mom. You're the worst mom. I hate you so much. You're so mean to me. And then the 6-year-old starts hitting his mom. A lot of hitting, like on a daily basis.
Wow.
And then she is not knowing what to do because she's scared. She's overwhelmed. He's a strong 6-year-old. And she says to me, sometimes if I am successful at getting him to stop hitting me, then he will go hit his sister who's 3 years older. So physical boundaries. We cannot tolerate any type of violence, hitting, or bullying in the house. Don't you agree? There needs to be a boundary.
Yeah, I'd love to get your take on that, because I'm sure there's different methods on how you stop. Do you do it back to show them it doesn't feel good? Do you try to talk with words to get it? I know. I'm just giving out examples.
I gave her 10 action steps right then and there.
Great.
And what I did is, because there was a few other moms on the call, I said, Moms, I need your help with this.
Right.
What else can we do? And so here we are, these fantastic 3 moms and myself. We gave this single mom out of Australia 10 action steps, and she's going to go and you start using them. She's like, Can
you share one?
Oh yeah, so many. One would
one.
be you can grab your kid's hands, and you can say, "Do not hit me," or you can say, "We don't hit," or you can grab their hands and you can say, "Hands are not for hitting." Another tip is you can say, "Ouch." Ouch, that really hurt.
Right.
You could say another tip. You could say, look, you are allowed to hit pillows and your squishies, but you are not allowed to hit people here. So if you're angry, Now you're labeling it. You're helping them understand. I know you're very angry, but in this home, when you get angry, we do not hit. You have to go. So now you're emotion coaching the child into this.
That's great. Because mine wants to say, you hit me, I hit you. What goes around comes around.
And that's
eye for
that's
an
old school
eye.
parenting. Yeah, and some parents are still doing that today to
Sure,
teach their
I
kids.
know.
And then another, really popular one is you walk them to their bedroom using force. And then you don't lock them in the room, but then you sit with them in the room. But this is a single mom, and she doesn't feel comfortable grabbing her son's arms or hands. And so we need to give her power, and she's got to, because I said we got to stop a 6-year-old hitting, because you don't want this kid to wake up and he's 9-year-old and now he's hitting, and it's actually a lot harder at age 9. Yep.
Well, that's great. I'm glad you gave those tips. I'm glad you have the other moms chime in and help as well. I feel for some of those moms that feel vulnerable and they don't want to use their force, but sometimes you kind of really got to step up to the plate.
You got to.
This is not okay.
This is not okay. Yep. Here's another area that we need boundaries. Isn't that the worst when you're driving the car? You're driving the minivan. You're driving the Honda Odyssey, the Sienna, whatever you're rocking, and the siblings are provoking each other, breaking each other's boundaries, hitting each other. And you got twins, man, so that must happen on the daily.
It's getting worse as they're getting older. I'm like, what is happening? It's great because we've got the third row now. So we've got one of those bigger vehicles which got the third row. And I just say, pick your row and stay there. And that is your section. Do not cross this boundary. Okay, because there's boundaries now in the car with their row. All right, and they have actual. So that's been helpful when they're next to each other. Oh my gosh, it's terrible.
I wonder if there's ever been a family that has like 5 kids and they break out and they purchase like a 15-passenger van. Every kid gets their own row, right?
Yeah,
right. Or you're like, no one's touching each other because I can't drive in peace. All right, how about this?
It's sad. There's been headlines, where a family would, accidentally have driven off a cliff, right? And they've all, died inside, and actually tragic. Think of these big mountain, highways in the West where you look down, you're steep embankment on the side, and whatever happened in that moment, right? That could have caused that. But think about this. I mean, these kids doing this is a huge distraction.
It is so
right.
It's
a huge distraction, and one look back to say stop, and you turn back around. You're in the other lane. You swerve, and unfortunately, terrible things can happen.
Have to have boundaries in the car.
Yes.
And then 2 other areas. I mean, I can do a long list, but we're just doing a quick list. So if this relates to you now, this is for you, or in the future. So imagine you live in like a small apartment or a small condo, and you can't. Maybe the kids share a room, and there's
no space.
There's no space. Right.
Right.
Every home needs boundaries, but especially if you have a smaller home, you need to have a home culture of boundaries.
Yeah, or like a 1-bathroom home.
Oh my gosh!
For the 1-bathroom home. Yeah.
Hey, there's one thing worse, and lastly, there's one thing worse than having an elementary age kid following you around their house. Can I tell you what's worse than that?
What?
Is having a teenager following you around the house. That's a thing. Did you know that? That's a thing.
Really?
Yeah.
As in, like, I can't leave your side. I need to be next to my parents all the time?
No.
Or
like, you will talk to me. I will not leave. You need to give me this right now. That's not fair. That's not fair. Talk to me. Talk to me. No. No, I won't get out of your room. No, give me my screen. No, give me my screen.
Oh, really?
No, go punish my brother. You need to do this for me right now.
No.
I'm not leaving you until you give me what I want.
Those people are out there? Those kids?
So many teenagers are doing that to their parents nowadays, man.
They think they have power.
They do have power. They're teenagers.
They do have power.
And then you got a dad who doesn't know what to do. Am I going to hit my kid? My kid's in my face, cussing me out. I can't hit my kid. I don't want to. I might kick my kid out. Walk. You need to leave? I don't want to do that. And it's just, or you have a single moms and you have teenage boys following them around the house, punching holes in walls, breaking down the doors. This is like everyday life for many, many parents. This is why we're doing this podcast.
That's
because
crazy.
we love you. We want you to know you're not alone and you need new tools.
I'm reminding of like the days of the triangle when the mom would ring the triangle, ding 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 ding, ding, dinner's ready. Kids are out just getting lost in the field somewhere.
Yeah.
There's a scene in The Sandlot where Smalls doesn't have any friends, and the mom's like, "Go outside, get dirty, get into trouble, have some fun, make some friends." Basically, get out of my face, get out of this house, and go get lost.
That's a nice way of saying it, right? Go out there.
Right.
Yeah, part of I guess we should. I don't know if we're going to touch on this. I wasn't planning on it, but partly why so many of us are struggling with boundaries is because our kids are inside more than ever, and also because we, as parents, were afraid to send them outside the house without supervision. Yeah. Right? We had a lot of teaching about that. If you're parenting in fear, you're afraid of having your kid ride their bike down to the local 7-Eleven. If you're afraid of your kid playing around in their neighborhood or riding a bike in their own neighborhood, you might be really causing damage to your child and to your own home. And it's just like you're creating this septic of these kids cooped up in a house, and it's just not the human experience, right?
I mean, before we get to some of your tips on boundaries and an idea of what they are, there's a commercial in Georgia right now on the radio, and it's the funding came from like the public service of Georgia or something, where it's basically like, here's why putting kids in sports is so good.
Really?
Right? And it's trying to convince people that like, hey, you got to get them outside. You got to get them in a structure with other kids.
Yeah.
And again, that could go back to boundaries as well. And kids learn a lot about boundaries in a sports environment too. So it kind of goes off of what you're saying.
Whenever I see those commercials on the air, usually I like them. Like, I'm like, that's cool. But I always ask myself, Jordan, like, how much did that cost? And what type of stats are these people seeing that leads them to make a commercial? Like, correct. I think the weirdest commercial is the ones about fatherhood. Like, it says, go be a dad today.
Go be a dad.
It's like, what the hell is going on? What are you seeing, government, that is making you spend millions of dollars of our taxpayers on encouraging us to be dads? Are the dads that bad? Like,
well, I don't know. You see it more than all of us. I mean, there's probably a lot of single moms coming to you. There's probably not a lot of dad figures that are stepping up to the plate to be good dads.
I have a section in my book that is specifically, just a small section specifically for dads. And it really specifically highlights how I see so many moms, so many females really stepping up to be the matriarchs of their homes, to be leaders. But it does kind of make sense that we do need more dads to be better. We need them to be better than they are. We need to show up.
And of course, that comes with like teamwork, trying to create this safe space of a home with healthy boundaries. Right. So I guess kind of get us an idea of what we're looking at when it comes to like a healthy household with something called boundaries. And I guess, can you define it for us? Is it everything we've been talking about?
Well, I just had a flashback to my own childhood. A painful one. I just made a joke about commercials on dads. And then I realized that I barely saw my dad between the ages of 6, 12, and 18. I barely saw that man. I saw him maybe once or twice a year. And he never drove down to see any of my basketball games. And I wonder, what was he thinking when he saw a video on Be a Dad Today? Like, it obviously didn't work. Like, does a video make someone want to be a good dad? At least the government's trying to do something good. But yeah, that's like
it's like two things. Like, it either shames you and then you crawl back in the hole and continue to not be one, or it says, no, I'm going to step up to the plate and do it. It just there's two different people. There's so many different ways to look at it.
Yeah, there is.
How your view is on life.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess, I mean, it sounds like good content, and this is kind of like why we're making these podcasts. We do this because we're trying to inspire people to not create any type of dad guilt or mom guilt. But let's talk about an important topic, about how important it is to create a home culture of healthy boundaries. I've got 5 tips for you. When we first started this podcast, we had a little section called Ask the Family Coach. We don't usually, we kind of changed the format of, we don't really talk about that so much, but every episode, Jordan and I want to give you tips and tools. And here's 5 action steps on how you can create a home culture of healthy boundaries.
Write them out.
You ready? I got number one.
Yeah. No, tell me.
Okay,
I want to
number
know.
one.
I'm like, I'll write them out. Yeah.
If you ask the average parent who's kind of struggling with boundaries or struggling with parents, what I have found is that a lot of them say something like this. They say, I struggle with consistency.
Okay.
Does that kind of make sense?
I think honestly too, before that, a lot of people struggle with what they want their boundary to be. It just they make it up on the spot. Right? Like they're not thinking about what I want this household to be or what I need for me to thrive.
This is why this podcast is going to be so helpful, because of what you just said. What I think you just said is, if action step is to create a home culture of consistent boundaries, the antonym to that is what Jordan just said, which is you're not being consistent. What you're being is emotional.
Reactive,
reactive emotional. So like, for example, like one of the best ways to think about it, let me make up like a silly scenario. Let's say that there's many kids that when they go to school, they look at the lunch menu for the 5 days. Like I was one of those kids, because they want to know, like, when is Sloppy Joe's, when is chicken nuggets, right?
Yeah.
They want to. I like knowing what I'm going to eat. Like it's part of my life, food.
Right.
There's many kids that look at their week and they think about it. They don't like surprises. They like having things mapped out. So wouldn't it be really weird for a child to show up and it's pizza day and they say, yeah, I'm the lunch lady and I just want to let you know I changed my mind. And so today I'm just offering this green bean casserole because I feel like it.
Right.
The kids are like, what the hell?
Wait a second.
Like,
I came
wait
here.
a second. Hopefully not say what the hell. Maybe
Right.
edit that part out. But they'll be like, wait a second. Or what would happen if their kid's playing soccer and the referee is like, blows the whistle. Hey, guys, normally that would be a foul, but I don't really feel like giving a foul today.
Right.
It's so unpredictable. With the
And
kids in
fair.
our lives,
Not
they
fair.
need
As what kids say.
predictable
They say,
adults.
it's not fair.
It's not fair. It's not fair. So what it means is, to be consistent, you're going to have to do work on your emotions. Because if you're not being consistent with your boundaries, you're being emotional with your boundaries. And it's just really hard on children for you to be like, hey, son, I feel like you've had enough screen time. So we were done for today. Well, the other 3 days, it was inconsistent. And then kids are going to be upset and they're going to have temper tantrums because there's no consistency around anything.
And I'm very inconsistent when it comes to that too. And we all can be, but I think the object here is for us to be more consistent. And just so you know, I got a story here as we get through this first topic.
Yeah.
I think the rule book or the guidelines or the boundaries can kind of shift as you age in parenting. I got a friend right now. They've got a 1-year-old. Okay. The 1-year-old is so curious about the dang fireplace, wants to crawl inside, grab the rocks and throw them all over the place. So they're realizing, oh, I need to create this boundary of like actually putting up a boundary so they don't go and touch it. Yep. And then you got to think like, oh, I got to now check outlets. I got to check corners, and we got to make sure we protect this thing with, boundaries at that age. Yeah. And then as they get older, they'll figure out new boundaries.
Yeah, like I'm not saying for you to do this, but one of the best choices my wife Danielle and I made is we made a rule, we made a boundary that during this school year there's no screen time allowed during weekdays, 0 screen time. And so that worked for us because we don't have to deal with our kids asking us for more screen time. We don't have to deal with any negotiations, any temper tantrums. Like, our just kids, no, this is not what we do. And then, and if you do well during the week with your studies and your behavior, then yes, you get a couple hours of screen time on the weekends.
Sure.
And it's just predictable. They just know. And so, like, what you don't want to do is just get in this feelings where, like, well, today we're allowed to hit, but the next day we're not allowed to hit. Or today, this is the rule, but because mom's feeling down this week, the rule has changed. That's inconsistent parenting, and that's not what our kids need.
So I'm going to be that parent that questions you and says, well, what do you do with your kids after they get home from school for 6 hours before they go to bed?
No, please do. Well, what we do is they have to entertain themselves.
Right.
So,
and I was going to say to that,
problem.
put them, figure out what they're interested in. Yeah. Right now, for me, I'm like, guys, go do something. So my daughter's like, I want to do art club after school. I want to go to, what's the acronym? It's after school program, ASP. I'd like to do ASP a couple times a week.
Yep.
And that way they're busy.
Yeah.
They're hanging out with friends. They're coloring. They're doing cool things. Maybe
Right.
they're doing a sport. They
Yep.
practice, and they're not getting home till later in the evening.
There
Then they're
you go.
exhausted. Then they eat.
Yeah.
And boom, homework done. Go to bed.
Yeah. Yeah. I just think that it's like there's this fine line between like saying to your kids, like, hey, this is your responsibility to go play with your toys, get some artwork, sign up for a sport, entertain yourself. And then on the other line, it's like, hey, I'm going to help you with this. But it's not my job to entertain you. Like, this isn't the circus and I'm not the conductor. Like, this is your job and it's my job to give you the resources you need so you have plenty of stuff to do after school. And so this consistency is really key. And this is why, like for me, I'm realizing like one of the things that I've been struggling in recently is that I've recently been letting my, I've talked about this in a podcast in the past. I've recently been letting, she just turned 8. I've just been releasing my 8-year-old to hit me. So I've been very consistent in letting her hit me.
Is this like a test, like you're trying something out for your book, or you just accidentally happen to
like
let her?
it's just like this mixture. She does a lot of play hitting, right?
Yeah.
It's like wrestling with me. But then what evolved in is like when she gets upset, she'll slap me or she hit me. But it doesn't hurt me because, I'm 6'2" and I work out. So it doesn't really faze me. But then I have my other daughters and my wife telling me, like, Sean, this is happening a lot. You have to stop this. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is what I did. I've been consistent and not setting a boundary. And so right now we're on this season with Kenzie, and I say, you're not allowed to play hit me anymore. We're taking a break because it's just, we need to set a boundary. You're not allowed to hit me, whether we're playing or when you're serious, because it's like she's lost the privilege of play hitting with me.
Correct.
For a period of time.
Right.
So I'm being consistent in that. And it's hard, man. It's hard.
Yeah, it is hard because she's going to be reactionary and do it anyway because she'll forget, and you have to continue to remind for probably a long time. It's not like these boundaries are going to be set instantaneously. It takes a long time.
It does. Like here's a boundary. Let's say you have kids who are fighting each other and constantly provoking each other in the car. First, realize that in a sense you did that. Like, you have created that culture. You've allowed it. Well, Sean, what else can I do? Well, there's a lot of things you can do. Here's something that I've done. I pulled over. I turned around. I put it in park. I said, guys, I'm sorry. I won't continue driving like this. And then I talk to them, whether it's a hard talk or a little pep talk or a little scolding or like a helping them, whatever it is. I have sent a message to the kids when they are violent with each other or provoking each other, or this car, we're not driving anymore. And so it works. We don't have that issue in the family because of that. So see what I did there? I'm consistent. Yeah. I remember one time I even pulled over, I think it was like at a roller rink, and I walked around the parking lot for 20 minutes because I was so upset. I was so angry. And I said, look, I can't do this. I cannot drive a car when you guys are treating each other like this. And so if this continues, I'm just going to pull over and I'm going to walk around and calm myself down because I don't want to snap at you. I don't want to yell, but I hate it. And then what happened after that is I'd have to say like, hey guys, you guys aren't chilling out. I want to pull over. And then guess what happened? They were like, okay, Dad, okay. And they would they would shape up.
Have you ever had a situation though where something like that was happening? You maybe weren't nearby. Let's say you're at the roller rink, kids are fighting, and your wife Danielle is kind of allowing it. She's just like, Then you go and see it, and maybe they're being mean to her, and so you say, absolutely not.
Yeah,
we're leaving right now. And then your wife says, hey, it's fine.
Mm-hmm.
It's fine. They didn't mean it.
Right.
Let's not ruin this experience. Let's stay. And you're like, no, I'm trying to create a boundary here. But the other partner is not as firm as you are.
This is why, this is the challenge of co-parenting and being married and having a spouse. Because if you're going to be consistent, you got to realize you're on a team. You're an equal 50% member. So you have to create a system, a consistent pattern with your spouse that feels comfortable, and hopefully you guys can work together. Let's move on to number 2, because number 1 is really hard, but I'm glad we spent the most time on it, because these other ones it's all going to kind of flow together. So you've got to explain what's happening. So whether you're driving and you pull over at a roller rink, or let's say you're taking the kids to soccer and you say this, look, soccer is important to all of us, but what's more important is this family. Family's more important than soccer. So if we need to be late, we're going to be late. And I need you guys to honor each other's boundaries. So explain the why. And one of my favorite hacks, you've maybe heard me say this before, is use the word boundary a lot.
Yeah, I was just going to say that. Right.
Isn't that, have you tried that with your kids? Do they,
yes.
How do they respond?
And we've incorporated the word boundary and the word trust. And they work, like you've said.
Yeah.
Can I trust you, right? Yeah. And it puts it back into, can you respect my boundary?
Yeah.
And then ultimately tell them what the boundary is. And then it puts it back into their plate like, oh, this is a challenge. Yeah, I could do that,
Oh, that's good.
It's been good.
Yeah, because your kids are never going to take class on the psychology of boundaries. So you can say, guys, you have to imagine there's a boundary here, and you're not allowed to cross it. Girls, you can't just walk into each other's rooms and steal each other's clothes. This is a boundary. Right. I know you're sisters. I know you love each other. But when you cross each other's boundaries, it affects everyone. And you could say, look, honey, you're allowed to scream in this house, but you're not allowed to scream in the living room. If you want to scream, you got to go in your own bedroom and scream into a pillow, or you can walk outside and yell. But there's a boundary here. You cannot cross this line. We do not scream in this room.
I hate screaming too.
I know.
Even outside, I'm like, gosh, I'm like, okay, we're outside. No, it's okay, we're outside. What's up with noise? Why does noise bug us so much? As we get older, it's like, noise. Can we just be quiet, please?
Well, they're getting loud. They're getting older, so they have louder voices.
Louder voices. My ears are getting more sensitive.
Yeah, I think it could be part of just your culture too, because like I made jokes about Italians at the beginning of this. Like some Italians, they love yelling at each other. Those hot button Italian families, they go at it with each other, and they're totally cool with it, you know?
Yeah.
Or New York families, they got that.
Right.
So yeah, explain it. Like explain and teach and use the word boundary. Make the word boundary like an everyday, common word in your home. And if you start at a young age, like, hey, we do not hit. This is a boundary. This is my body. This is my body. You're not allowed to hit it. And you are not allowed to hit it. This is where it's at. We'll teach them at a young age that you must honor each other's boundaries.
Yeah, I like that. That's really good, because if you don't explain it to them, then they're not going to know. If you say, why not? Because I said so. Well, okay. Yeah. So I just have to do whatever you say because it sets, like, at least help them understand.
I think this is where, like, people skip the step because they're like, don't hit your sister. Don't. Right. You hit her one more time, you're in trouble.
That's not okay.
Instead, It's like, look, I know you like touching. I know you like messing with your sister. Right? It must be fun for you. Right? But you've got to realize that when you hit her, then she makes a noise in the minivan, and then it hits my ears. And I'm driving a car, so there has to be like this boundary between me and you, and I can't hear this noise coming into my little cabin here. It's like there's this. It hurts me. It affects me. And so now they're realizing there's audio boundaries. That's another boundary. Like audio boundaries, isn't that right? Like sound boundaries.
Mm-hmm. All I'm doing right now is picturing you with your hat sideways, window down, in a minivan rolling down the streets of California.
Oh my gosh. That's funny.
It is funny.
Boundaries. My boundaries got violated today because we have this like stump pump. It's not a septic tank, but the circuit break in our house, and all the sewage was leaking out of this tank in my front yard. Talk about a boundary breaker.
Dude, that must have smelled rough.
It stunk. Thankfully, a plumber came on it, fixed it really ASAP, and it's all good.
So what was the boundary that was broken?
I'm just being silly about my noise, my smell boundaries, dude.
Your smell boundary?
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
How about this? Chewing gum. It's like, seriously? You got to smack every time? Like, come on.
Your next point here is maybe the most important point for some of you. Here is, if you've ever wondered, like, why does my home have no boundaries. Why am I so poor at boundaries? If you're a parent and you struggle with people pleasing, you might struggle with boundaries. If you're a parent and you really are afraid of your kid not liking you, you probably struggle with boundaries.
Yep.
If you're a parent and you're struggling with yelling or losing your temper, you're struggling with boundaries. Here's your next thing I want you to think about. How to create a home culture of healthy boundaries is you got to realize that healthy boundaries are married to healthy self-care.
I was just going to say, a lot of us don't take care of number one because you think you're being selfish, which is like, going back to the analogy of in the airplane, the air masks come down, you put the dang thing on yourself before you put it on your kids, because you put it on your kids first, you could pass out and they're not big enough to put it on you. So it's like, you've got to take care of yourself. You've got to make sure that you're headstrong. You got to go maybe hit the gym for 30 minutes to get that adrenaline going, to get the dopamine hit so you can come home and be calm and soothing parent. You got to look out for yourself and what's best for you, and then you could be the best teacher that you could be.
Imagine
Because what do you say? Every house is a school, and what's the saying?
Every parent is a teacher, and every home is a school.
Every parent is a teacher. Yes.
Let's imagine that you're living in a one bedroom. In a 2-bedroom apartment. I was raised
when I was a kid.
Redondo Beach, California, and we had a 2-bedroom apartment.
Yeah,
Brookside Village.
3 kids.
I shared
we were in one room.
a bedroom with my 2 sisters.
Yep.
And so let's now imagine that we're these parents and we're living in these apartments. And many people listening, that's me. They don't need to imagine it. How can you do this? How can you have healthy boundaries and healthy self-care? I'll go first and then you go next. Imagine, what would you do at this age? I think for me, what I'd be doing is guys, I'm going to be on the patio. I just need some alone time. Please do not come out there. I could see myself doing that.
Yeah.
Spending a lot of time on the patio. Just breathing. What would you do?
I would try my best to get the bedtime routine down to where I at least get some time after they go down to myself.
Gosh. Yeah, you'd have
right?
to.
As much as I can. Hey, it's 8:30, 8 o'clock. I don't know. It depends on the age. We need you all in your bedroom. I'm going to shut the door. I don't want you laughing. The hard part now is like, we got 10-year-olds? How old are my kids? I don't even know. 10-year-old kids. They have their own bedrooms, but they're always in each other's bedrooms at bedtime, playing, laughing, giggling, doing everything that you could have done all day, but you decided to fight on. And now it's bedtime, and now you just want to stay up and have fun.
Right. Here's a tip. I'm going to tell you a parenting tip in a creative way. Jordan, I have a new neighbor because we just moved. His name is Trent, and he lives next to me. I'm going to text him today or tomorrow, and I'm going to ask him what his favorite beer is. And I'm going to invite him over to my house, maybe go for a swim, and I'm going to gift him a 6-pack of his favorite beer when he shows up. Why do you think I'm going to do that?
To be a great neighbor, because everybody knows having a terrible neighbor is awful.
The worst.
It's like the worst thing.
I'm going to do that. There's also, I have an ulterior motive.
I know you do.
Because when we go like camping or out of town, I need a neighbor to roll in my trash cans from the street.
Okay.
And my driveway is very long. It's like 1,000 feet long or something like that, 600 feet long. So I'm going to be like, hey, Trent, I'm going camping. And would you be down to bring in my garbage cans off the street so I don't get in trouble with HOA?
Yeah.
So here's what it means. If you're living in living in an apartment or a condo with lots of people, here's a tip. Try to find some nice older woman or man, older couple who lives near you. Befriend them. Have them over for dinner. Just evaluate them. Size them up. And then ask them to help you with babysitting or to give you a break here and there. You've got to have a village, whether you're married and you've got a ton of relatives around you, or you got no relatives around you and you've got a kid. Don't you agree that we need to have a village around us?
I do. I don't think a lot of people have said to do something like that, because it is smart to go outside your little box and look for help. Now, a lot of folks listening, especially the guys, you're like, I don't need help.
Yeah.
I got this. I can take care of it. But the reality is, it takes a village. Like, you can't
Yeah.
do everything yourself. You will drown yourself.
Or if you're a man or a woman, you're a single parent, and you have no family around, or you have a challenging, marriage, go down to the local church and start meeting people. Go to church there. Go to a small group. Join a men's group or a women's group. And then say, because they're going to say to you, how's it going? How you doing? How can we help you? And say, you know what? Is there anyone in the church that you know of who maybe can just come over when I need a little break from the kids and just watch them? And there's like a lot of old ladies in these churches that would love to do this for free. They don't need you to pay them $20 an hour. They love kids and they want to help. They want to serve. They want to help people. They want to feel useful because all they're doing, and so we need boundaries, because what's going to happen then is if you don't have this time for self-care, you're just going to be an exhausted parent. You're going to let your kids violate your boundaries, or you're going to be this angry, yelling parent because they're not listening to your boundaries. It's like, you can't do this. You're not a superhero. You need time to take care of yourself so that you can show up with love.
That's good. And your relationship. And you need to continue to work on each other too, because I know probably a handful just in my life of people who got divorced after all their kids were grown up. And I'm like, oh my gosh, they were together for so long. Why did this happen? And then I look at it, I'm like, oh, because you just get into a groove, your roommates, and you put all your care into your kids, which I get it. It seems like it's a great thing to do. Yeah. But I think what you're saying is you can love your kids the same amount and take care of yourself first before you take care of them.
Yeah. Doesn't it make sense? Like, you can't do boundaries without self-care. Like,
no,
boundaries are a form of self-care, and self-care is a form of boundaries. It's kind of makes sense. So here's what we have so far: how to create a great home with great boundaries. You got to be consistent. Figure out what you and what you guys are into, and then be consistent with that. Number 2, explain the why. Explain the why. Number 3 is, and then use the word boundaries quite a bit. Help them understand there's boundaries, invisible boundaries, audio boundaries. If my wife was listening to this, she'd be rolling her eyes right now, like, Sean, you're so dumb with words. You just make up words. Like, number 3 is married. Realize that if you're gonna do boundaries, you got to do self-care. And then I'm just gonna do one more. Okay. What do you do, Jordan? I'm gonna tell you my opinion. I'm gonna put you on the spot. What do you do if your kid breaks your boundaries or is bothering their sibling and breaking their boundaries? What do you do? We got to talk about that.
What we do is we try and sit down and talk to them whenever the boundary is big enough to warrant it. Sometimes we have a problem with rule number 1, consistency, and we'll let things go. And we'll just say, hey, stop, don't hit your sister, or don't, whatever it is. And we just gloss over it. But then there comes a time where we're like, no, we need to sit down and this needs to be a heart-to-heart. This needs to be a talk-through. And so we'll sit and talk and have them.
It's great parenting.
When we use our language, we really try to be mindful of how we're using our language to allow the aha to happen into their mind, so we're not just telling them the answer.
What I heard you say there was great parenting. I'm gonna put into a little chapter. Make a scene. You got to make a scene when boundaries are violated. You got to make a point. You got to point it out. One of the saddest clients I've ever had, I only met with them once or twice. That's probably why I'm so sad about it.
Did they just stop coming, or did?
Yeah, because they didn't.
You just couldn't help
them. The mom didn't want to take my advice. She wasn't ready to change. She had 3 teenage boys, and they were all hating her, cussing her out.
Okay. Oh.
Manipulating her. And she had divorced her husband, who was just like sitting there watching his sons like be ruthless to their mother. And he's trying to parent them. He had a military background, and she would just say, get out of here. Don't parent them. I'm doing this my way. And you're so mean to the boys. And then she would call him for help. Help. They're hitting me. They're not listening to me. And then he would come over and like, I'm here to help. And then she says, no, I don't want you to help. I don't want you to do this. And like the mom just was, I never got to know her that well because I only met with her one time, but she just had no boundaries, no physical boundaries. And 3 teenage boys were out of control and walking all over her. And that's just a hot mess, man. It's just sad to think about that family. That was like 2-3 years ago. That was one of the worst. That was so.
It's
so
sad
bad.
when like it's like having the family member or the best friend that's going down a path that everybody knows is a terrible path to go down, whether it's drugs or
Yeah.
parenting in a not a right way,
Right.
whatever it is.
Yeah.
You all
Right.
see it. You try to raise the red flag,
Yeah.
sound the alarm,
Yeah.
but it's like you can't fix other people. You can
No,
give them
you
tools
can't.
and
Right.
guidance, but they have to take the
Yeah.
steps. They have to walk their own path. And it is sad because you're like,
Yeah.
what are you doing?
Yeah.
All you have to do is turn left and go this way, and everything's gonna be fine. Yeah, but I don't want to go this way. This way is just fine too. No, it's not. This is why.
Yes.
I'm not gonna listen to you. You don't know what
Yeah.
you're talking about. And then you see it, and you're just like,
Right.
oh my gosh, I'm
know.
gonna pull my hair out.
Well, what makes me think of is in this culture, in the parenting culture we have, we often talk negatively about yelling. We demonize yelling. We talk negatively about drug use, screen use, snapping at your kids, being too harsh with them. Those are all bad things, right? We agree. But we don't talk about people pleasing, and we should. We should talk
Right.
about how people pleasing in a family unit, especially from a parent's point of view, is such enabling, and it's so destructive to the family unit, to a marriage, and to a child's development. People pleasing is so
That needs
bad.
to be a whole chapter in your book. You're right.
Why don't we do a whole? Well, there we go. We'll do it next week.
People pleasing.
Let's do next week. Let's
Because
do some,
I would say I'm a people pleaser. I think the hardest thing to say is no when someone comes to you for help. But then you have to figure out when you're being taken advantage of. You have to figure out what your boundaries are. That's what goes back to the first
Yeah.
part. We don't know what our boundaries are. We just know we want to make people like us. We
Yeah.
want to fit in. We want to be the cool kid at school.
Yeah.
So we're gonna do the hit of weed if the cool guys are saying, "Hey, take a hit,"
Yeah.
right? And we don't have those boundaries, and it unfortunately some people don't know how to like get them.
I really hate the term people pleasing, and so I'm getting a little weird again with words. You're definitely not a people pleaser. You do. I think I know you well enough to know
I'm
that
a yes
you have
person,
people
though.
pleasing tendencies, and it's
Yeah.
a temptation because you're so likable. People like you, and you want people to like you more than people like and so that's like your greatest strength is your greatest weakness. So your ability to get people to like you, to avoid conflict, and to communicate is such a gift you have. But yes, that can often be married to people-pleasing tendencies. But no, you're definitely not a people-pleasing parent or a person, right? So like, why would you label yourself with that title?
I what I'm trying to say is I could see myself. I mean,
Yeah.
earlier in life I was. I would say yes to everything just because I wanted the opportunity and
yeah.
I wanted to show that I'm worthy. I wanted to climb the corporate ladder. I wanted to be liked, right? And I think that comes with age. That comes with finances when you can turn away and say no.
Yeah, yeah. Yep.
It comes with self-confidence.
Yep.
Sometimes that it takes decades to get all that until you're
Yeah,
finally
well
comfortable.
said.
And that's why some people think that older people are mean because they have all that. And they're like, I don't need
Yeah.
to please you.
That's funny.
I can be so straight with you right now. Like you're being
That's-
stupid, and you're like,
well, they are
they're so
mean, but-
abrupt.
You're right. Some are mean, and some are not mean because they learned how to set boundaries and say no in a kind way. And that's their goal, right?
Like
Because,
Dave
yes,
Ramsey, when you hear him talk on his radio, you can be like, dude, this dude is harsh.
Oh,
But he's gotten to the point where he's like, he knows his boundaries. He knows what the right path is in his mind. And people who don't listen are just stupid. That's
Yeah.
that's his
Yeah.
terminology.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Well, here's some. So let's some takeaways from that is how do we set boundaries in a kind, strong way, not in a people pleasing way.
not in a
And then
people-pleasing
here
way,
is something
right.
to think about. When I told you these stories today about a 6-year-old hitting his mom, or a teenager hitting his mom, or kids in my car driving me nuts and provoking each other, turning around and having them, coaching them is good. Turning around and
create a
having
scene.
a scene,
Yes.
slowing it down and being like, no, you can't play hit me anymore, Kenzie. Like, it's not working. This is good. But what I have found is that there's a piece of this pie that you cannot forget.
Overlook.
And it's called making of amends. Because what we do is we sometimes force a child to apologize. And I don't believe in forced apologies. They don't work. Instead, what I coach you, my fellow parent, is instead of forcing your kids to apologize, teach them how to make amends, coach them on the brilliance in the multitude avenues of making of amends, and then teach them to comfort and care for the person that they just hurt or broke their boundaries. Much more effective than a consequence is a making of amends. What do you think about that?
Yeah. And I was even thinking more like parent to child. Like if you're saying to create a scene, sometimes that scene is abrupt.
Yeah, it
And
is. It needs to
we
be.
as parents could feel maybe shameful after we created the scene because like maybe we went too far. But Sean's saying, no, you sometimes have to make the scene.
You do.
And then you go to make amends after.
And yeah, sometimes I know I go too far. My wife tells me that's just too much. But that's because I'm not a perfect parent, right?
Right, of course.
Because I'm freaking an alpha male,
Right.
strong parent. And it's like, it's just interesting. Like, this is kind of a side note. I saw this funny Instagram reel, and it's this mother holding her tween son who's like crying in his arms. And the caption reads, my child is crying because his father just raised his voice at him a little bit. Well, I've been screaming at him all day.
Right.
Right?
Well,
you
the
know,
mom's been
that's like
screaming
a
at him all
dad.
day.
If you know, you know. If you're a dad, then you know.
Yes.
You know what that means? So it's like, as some men, it's like there's different boundaries that women are allowed to cross that we're not allowed
Right.
to cross. So in this home,
Correct.
like, it seems to me like I don't think my wife's allowed to raise her voice, but I'm not because of different reasons.
Because you're a big, bad, scary
And my
dad.
voice is really loud and scary, and that's just a boundary
Right.
that I've learned to accept. You know,
Right.
I've learned to accept, not fighting it. Like, they've set that boundary, and I'm good with that. I'm like, I get it. It's just the way it is. It's the way of the world right now, right?
I'll tell you what, I'm going to go back and really think about the first tip of just trying to figure out the boundaries in general. Because I am loosey-goosey fluid, you know, and we have some sturdy boundaries, but the reality is, like, we all need to sit back and think for a second. Like, what do we really want this household to be like?
And I think for some parents listening to this, they need to be more loosey-goosey. They're a police
Too strict.
officer.
Yeah.
They're a fireman. Their house, you're a policewoman. Your house is not a police precinct. This is not the army barracks. You need to loosen up with your structure, with your consistency. Like, realize these are children. You got to be cool. Be the cool parent. Be the cool teacher the kids love.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Well, I'm thankful for you and for this beautiful start of the school year, that our kids are going to go to school and they're 1 year
Can't believe
older.
it's already here.
And
Wow.
they're ready to step in. And I'm just thankful for all the teachers out there, these amazing school teachers. Keep up the good work, everybody. Thank you for changing the world through your good teaching. Anything you're thankful
Yeah.
for?
Yeah, I'm thankful for obviously all the family structure to try to create these boundaries, but also thankful for the non-parents that are more like parents, right? Whether it's the coach or the teacher, these extracurricular activities that can help
Yes.
shape your boundaries, especially if you share it with them and they can help instill it into your child. So I'm thankful to have these other people in this big village to help create these beautiful people.
Everybody keep leading and keep teaching. Our kids need us to teach them about boundaries and for us to be the leaders and the teachers that they need.